Could anyone other than Cooper Flagg go number one in the draft? Who's in tier 1 and tier 2, plus additional lottery picks? It's a ton of draft talk in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Friday, and we are going to unveil my first NBA big board. Is Cooper Flagg a lock to go number one overall? Could someone else jump up into that mix too? I'll give you the tiers I have for the draft. We'll look at a bunch of guys in that mid-range too, some lottery picks. All of that and more in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. We're also going to look at Javonte Green being waived, being signed by Cleveland. What went on there? There's more than you think, and I'll explain what that is coming up a little bit later in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, and become an everydayer. If you are an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. So y'all ready for some draft talk? We're about to beat a college basketball channel here on Locked On Pelicans. We hit the final 25 to 30 games of the regular season here. So I've got my NBA big board up, and we're going to get right on into it. So a couple of things here. What we're going to go through are my first three tiers of the draft. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I've done this a little bit differently this year. There is one player in tier 1, and that is Cooper Flagg. And the reason that he's alone in tier 1 is the too long didn't listen to this part of the show is he's going number 1 overall. He's going number 1 overall. Cooper Flagg is going to be the number 1 overall pick. There is almost nothing barring a catastrophic injury that will change it. We'll get into his more recent comments of, I'd like to go back and play at Duke. We'll maybe talk about that. I'll do a bonus show on that over the weekend, maybe. I'm not worried about that comment. There's a real big reason why, and it has to do with even more money than you're probably thinking. So Cooper Flagg is going number 1 overall. He's in tier 1 by himself. He has been outstanding this year. Cooper Flagg, forward Duke, 6'9", averaging just under 20 points per game, about 50% from the field, 37% from three, almost 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.2 blocks per game. He's kind of done everything. He is not someone that's going to come into the NBA and score 25 points per game, lead the league in scoring or anything like that. He might not even be a 20-point per game scorer. But this is someone who might give you legitimately 19 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and like 4 steals plus blocks per game while competing on the defensive side of the ball. He is a very real deal. The other thing is he is young. He is exceptionally young here. He's played a lot of this season at age 17. And at age 17, he was invited to compete against the Team USA Olympic team and held his own and apparently lit it up in a practice, in a scrimmage. All that says real good things if you're a Cooper Flagg fan here. So he's in tier 1 by himself. It's tier 2 where it gets interesting. And I have 5 guys in this category. And they're in order here. So tier 2. So my second prospect here is Dylan Harper. The point guard, shooting guard, kind of guard out of Rutgers. 6'6". You know, he looks like he can run an NBA offense enough. And he's been very, very good. His jumper is not great, but when you watch him, he is a very good downhill driver. You see shades of John Morant in him there. And at 6'6" with really good size, he's going to be able to do that at the NBA level. Having that attacking, penetrating guard, something that this team has been missing for a while, that's a really useful player. I think he's just been better than his teammate Ace Bailey all season long. So he is my second prospect in this one. Third is Ace Bailey, the forward from Rutgers, at 6'10". He has everything you want in a modern NBA forward. The hyper athleticism, really tremendous size here, but he has not been the most consistent this season. By the way, Dylan Harper is averaging 18.5 points per game, almost 50% from the field, 32% from three, 4.7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1.1 steals. Ace Bailey's at 18.6 points per game, 46.6% from the field, 37% from three, 7.4 rebounds, 1 steal, 1.5 blocks per game. He's been really, really good, but he tends to settle for too many mid-range jumpers. He basically has some of that Brandon Ingram offense where it's like, I'm going to take some tough shots. To his credit, he makes them. But we're looking for efficient players that could fit around Zion Williamson. And while I really like Ace Bailey and he will be really good, and if you're picking in the top 3, you're just kind of going on talent, the fit with Zion, I think, could be a little clunky going into this one. At number 4 here, still in tier 2, I have Kasparas Yakuch. I've looked up how to pronounce his name, and I'm not going to do this too well. Hold on. So it's Kasparas, that's his first name. Yakuchonsis, yes. The guard from Illinois, Yakuchonsis. He's Lithuanian. 6'6" guard from Illinois. And what I really like about him is he looks like he will run an NBA offense. He looks kind of like that true point guard. And for a team with a need for that right now, given the injury to DeJounte Murray, I basically have him and VJ Edgecombe neck and neck here for this 4th spot. But because he's more of a point guard and looks like he can run an NBA offense, I really, really like that. The form and mechanics on his jumper looks really good too. 16 points per game, 46.6% from the field, 34.1% from three, 5.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and a little over 1 steal per game. He's going to be really, really good. He's an on-ball guy, so you wonder how he's going to work off-ball. Does that work with someone like Zion Williamson? But overall, I like him. He lacks top-end athleticism, but I really like what I've seen from him so far this year. VJ Edgecombe is number 5 here, the wing from Baylor, 6'5", 15 points per game, 46% from the field, 37% from three, 5.2 rebounds, about 4 assists per game. And on the defensive side of the ball, he's really good, over 2 steals per game. He's been really, really good. He's more of an off-ball combo guard and not like a true point guard or anything like that, and more of a secondary type of scorer, maybe kind of a replacement for CJ McCollum, potential like 6th man of the year kind of thing, with being a high-end starter as his ceiling. He's looked really good, and defensively he is really good too. And the other thing that you see watching him is he is a hyper intelligent basketball player. You want to add basketball IQ to this roster, he's definitely the guy that can do that. So final guy in my tier 2, since Cooper Flagg is all by himself. If you take Cooper Flagg out of this, these are all tier 1 guys here. That's Igor Demin, the wing from BYU. 6'8", really good size. There's one thing that I've not loved from him. He was higher up, I think, on most people's draft boards before BYU got into conference play. And conference play is a really important indicator of if a prospect is like truly good or was it not there. When you go from your non-conference schedule, even playing against good teams, they don't have a ton of time to scout you necessarily. There's issues with that. But when you get into conference play and teams are now scouting you more, they're playing you twice so they can throw adjustments at you. How do you respond as a player? And Demin has not done a good job of that. As they've gotten into conference play, his stock has kind of gone down. 11 points per game, a little over 43% from the field, under 30% from three, 3.6 rebounds, about 6 assists per, and about 1.5 steals per game. He's just not consistent here. And I struggle to see what his role would be at the NBA level. Like, the defense is not great, but it can be really good. The shooting is not there. Do you want a Josh Giddey level player? Like, he could, in theory, kind of be a bit of a point guard, but is it more of a Dyson Daniels kind of thing where the offense isn't there? The defense can be elite. And then what do you do with that kind of guy? And we've talked about Dyson Daniels where recently, like, I think he's coming back down to earth a little bit and people are like, oh, he's slightly better than last year, but not nearly as good as he was before. And that's something that's worth keeping in mind. So there's my tier 1 and tier 2. Do you have the same order? Am I missing someone? Let me know in the comments down below. So those are guys that I think basically are top five, could be top five picks. Tier 2 has 6 guys in there basically competing for 4 spots. That feels about right. Tier 3 is people that can be in the lottery, and these have the potential to rise the most, I think. And there's 1 or 2 in particular I'm really, really high on. Let's get into those. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save, and thanks to DashPass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day, and it's really simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 2024-2025 NBA regular season, DashPass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon until midnight. So there's a few ways you want to take advantage of this, right? Maybe it's lunch on the go. You were up late, you're tired, you need your lunch quickly. If you need a quick and easy lunch fix the next day with DashPass, you get your favorite meals with $0 delivery fees and reduced service fees. Plus, now you save even more with this exclusive NBA offer. Or maybe you were up late and you've got a craving now all of a sudden. So whether you're staying up late to watch highlights or you just need a midnight snack, use DashPass to grab something delicious while saving big. So sign up for DashPass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, DashPass members get a 50% off. Get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. You must have a DashPass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason here. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans when I'm healthy. Let me know if you're an everydayer down in the comments below. And don't forget about the daily Locked On Pelicans newsletter. Your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. So let's continue to talk about the NBA draft. My big board here. We just went over Tier 1 and Tier 2. Let's get into Tier 3. These are guys that are basically all could be lottery picks. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 people here. I want to cut this a little bit. 1 or 2 I think could rise up into Tier 2 and elongate that a little bit as we go on here. So let's get into some of these guys. At number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there we go. I have Derek Queen, the center from Maryland, 6'10". 16 points per game, over 55% from the field, almost 9 rebounds per game, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. He's been really, really good. He can play the center or power forward spot here, and you're going to feel really good about it from him. Defensively, he's not like an elite shot blocker or anything like that, but he does a good job of guys with size or even smaller big men who have a little bit more athleticism. He can move laterally side to side to kind of keep up with anyone, meaning he can defend on the perimeter. When you watch him, he's a shot maker. There is some shades of baby Karl Anthony Towns in him, I think. That actually comes from Will Guillory, who we'll have on the show soon to discuss a lot of NBA prospects with me. When we were talking before game, Will Guillory of The Athletic mentioned that to me, and I kind of liked that NBA comp here. I'm really high on Derek Queen if, say, you fall out of the top 5 and you want to get kind of that future big man that has more range than, say, an Yves Missi, and figure out if you can kind of build your front court around those 2 players. So Derek Queen is at 7. After that, I have Liam McNeely, the wing out of UConn, 6'7" here. He's been just pretty good this year. I had an ankle injury earlier on in the year, but since then, 15 points per game, over 43% from the field, almost 38% from 3, 6.5 rebounds, almost 3 assists per. He's got really good size, and he's a good scorer and shooter. And as the season has gone on, you've seen him get better on ball and do a little bit more playmaking, a little bit more creating here. He, of all the people, other than maybe Derek Queen that I'm going to mention here, probably has the best chance of rising up into that tier 2 and kind of being a borderline top 5 pick. After that, I have Trey Johnson, the wing out of Texas, 6'6". You remember during the trade deadline, there was a lot of talk about those kind of microwave 20-point per game scores. This is that kind of guy here. 19.8 points per game, 45% from the field, almost 38% from 3. He can rebound. He can move the ball a little bit too. Basically, that big wing scorer that can just go and get you buckets. And there is a need for that on this team. We'll even talk a little bit about that in the next segment as we get into Brandon Boston Jr. because there's a tie-in there. He feels really comfortable with the ball in his hands, and you look for him at the end of games to try and close them out. I don't know if he's going to be a top-end starter, but this is a guy who should have a long career in the NBA trying to kind of find that right role. If you get it for him, he's going to be really good. He has really good explosiveness, really good athleticism. Defensively, you'd like him to be a little bit better. That's what's probably going to prevent him from getting into that second tier, the defense. But this is a dude who can definitely go and score for you. Next up is Asa Newell, the big from Georgia at 6'11". Big dude right here. And that's kind of what I like about him very, very much. So 15 points per game, almost 57% from the field. Not a good 3-point shooter. Let's not even mention it. 7 rebounds per game, 1.2 steals, about 1.5 blocks per game. It's under 30% from 3. He's a really good defender, not an elite defender, but a very good defender. You won't likely see him in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. He's a probably borderline second team, all defensive team kind of guy in the NBA, and he can definitely be one of those people that gets into the passing lanes, forces a steal, and then leads you down in transition to score. His jumper is not great, but he shoots free throws relatively well, and the form looks good, so you wonder if he could develop that here. But as a finisher, as a lob threat, it's a guy that can get it done, and now that we're seeing Zion throw lobs a little bit, or if you get a point guard, what could that say right here? So we're kind of moving all over the place. Let's keep rolling here. Nolan Traore, point guard from Paris Saint-Germain over in France here. I don't like him because he's undersized, 6'3", but the numbers look really good if you're looking for another pure point guard. And I think he's probably second or third best in this class here. And he is deceptively fast and with a really good handle. This is the type of point guard that's able to probe a defense, break it down a little bit, and then finish at the rim. He's not a good shooter. That's going to take a while. He's much more of a project than some of these guys, slightly undersized too. But when you watch him and what he's doing, you feel like, yeah, there could really be something there. And if you're kind of going on like a dude dripping in potential, it's him. But that could also mean a bust. So he's a bit more of the type of guy that makes you wonder if it could be too much of a swing for what New Orleans needs to do right now. Next is Con Knippel. Yes, you heard that right. Wing from Duke at 6'6". He's just an all-around like good player, in my opinion. 13 points per game, 45% from the field, almost 39% from 3, 4 rebounds, 3 assists per. Defensively, he has a very, very high motor, something that the Pelicans tend to like. He's not an elite defender. Again, he's kind of like probably not going to make an all-defensive team here, but he is the type of guy that can kind of just contribute everywhere. And I like those type of players on a team that has Zion Williamson, that has a Trey Murphy, that has some other talent as well. Just get dudes that are going to help you win right away, and you'll feel really good about that. You might remember I really like Tristan da Silva going into this draft last year. I like those that are just NBA ready, that kind of do it all, particularly on the wing. Con Knippel is definitely that guy. Kaman Malik is the center from Duke, 7'2", 8 points per game, shooting almost 72% from the field because everything's at the rim. 6 rebounds and about a block and a half. The size is what does it, right? He's just a huge dude. He's a huge dude that can handle bigger, bruisier centers. And in the Pelicans division, that's a rather important thing. Think Zach Edey, right? Zach Edey was huge and just takes stuff away and bullies other people. This is someone who has no offense of his own. He's going to need a point guard to set him up. He every now and then hits a mid-range jumper or something like that, but you don't feel particularly great about it. But you just, I don't know, sometimes need size, right? Like that's been a big issue for the team. You want someone who's going to be able to rebound and bully guys. Yeah, it could be him here. So let's go international for the next two guys here. So we're going to start to kind of go real quickly through this here. Noah Esengwa, forward from Ratio Farm Ulm in Germany, 6'8" here. I've watched a lot of their games recently because they have two players that I think are really, really intriguing here. Esengwa has fallen off a little bit as their year has gone on, but overall, I really like him at 6'8". There's a lot to like from him, and it feels like he has a lot of kind of boom or bust high potential there too. 10.3 points per game, over 50% from the field, not shooting the three ball well, but about 5 rebounds per game. He's still very young, and if you're interested in those international players that could be like really, really good for you, he definitely kind of fits into that mix here. Ben Saraf, also from Ratio Farm Ulm in Germany, 6'5" as a wing, is some of that as well. He's much more of a playmaker here, though, and looks like he's going to be that kind of wing that helps facilitate an offense. You can throw him out there, and he just does a little bit of everything. You need that to kind of replace Najee Marshall to a degree because it wasn't Javonte Green. More on him next here. And he lacks a bit of a jumper. The shooting is not great, but almost 5 assists per game looks pretty good for both of those guys. Up next, and we've got 4 more, and we're going to go real fast here with some of these players as I'm pulling up all of my notes here, and I'm stalling for time to try and find them. Here we go. Adu Thiero, wing from Arkansas, 6'8", almost 16 points per game, 57% from the field, 6 rebounds per game, 1.7 steals. He's just really good inside. You get him the ball inside, you let him drive and attack, he can definitely do it. He defends almost 1 through 5, really not point guard, not all of that, but he can definitely guard at least 3 positions here. Not much of a great jumper, but his free throw shooting is really good. That can often be more telling for an NBA player if they have that kind of range and if they can develop a jumper at the NBA level when it comes down to it. After that, we're going to go real fast. I'm just going to tell you the order of these. We have Colin Murphy-Boyles, forward from South Carolina, 6'7". He's been, I think, pretty good this year. Johnny Broome, I'm really intrigued by, the big from Auburn at 6'10", kind of do-it-all kind of player here. Not an insane athlete, but really, really smart. A little bit older, but I feel like he can contribute right away. And then finally, one of the more intriguing prospects that probably needs another year in the NBA is Carter Bryant, the forward from Arizona at 6'8". So those are kind of the next tier 3 of lottery picks that I have at the NBA level. Let me know what you think. Is there someone I missed? Is there someone I should be watching? This will get adjusted and it'll definitely be much different in a month or two than what it is right now, but figured we should give you some draft talk, particularly on a Friday here before we got Mardi Gras parades this weekend. So coming up next, what happened with Javonte Green? Could the Pelicans not get anything for him? There's more to it than you think, and I'll explain what that is. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback or not for the Pelicans, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. The Dallas Mavericks are minus 5.5 tonight as we come back from the All-Star break against the New Orleans Pelicans. They have no big men playing. I actually think New Orleans can steal this game if Zion goes off, and he should go off. There's no excuse for him not to go off because I don't know who is in the front court for the Dallas Mavericks at all. So even if you miss the tip-off, that line's updating throughout the game, and you can get in on the action any time. And the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. For your second listen, Locked On Saints, the coaching staff is coming together for the black and gold. Ross Jackson's going to tell you what the offense is going to look like, what the defense is going to look like for the Saints next season. Go subscribe to Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So it was announced yesterday that the Pelicans have waived Javonte Green. They are reaching a buyout with him. I'll explain what that means in a second here. And he's going to be signing with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if your first question is, why didn't they just trade him? Valid thing to ask. So here's what it kind of came down to. The Pelicans actually didn't get an offer of a second round pick really for him whatsoever. Or at least like a real second round pick. You could maybe get like one of those top 55 protected second round picks, which like essentially may not exist. So they just didn't get offers. If they could have traded him for a decent enough second round pick, they would have. But a fake second round pick doesn't do you a whole lot of good, because if that's the case, say it was any of those contenders, whether it was the Boston Celtics, whether it was the Cleveland Cavaliers, doing that, you would have had to take salary back too. And there wasn't a ton of players on either of those teams basically trading a minimum guy for a minimum guy that made a ton of sense. And one of the reasons why the Pelicans did it this way versus potentially getting something, and again, you can only trade him if someone's willing to offer you something. And if they don't, there's no trade that they like didn't take or something like that. That's really important to keep in mind here. By waiving him, what you do when you reach a buyout with someone is, it's really the player, right, that does this more so than the team. The player is giving money back to the team. They're saying, oh, you were paying me, call it $2.5 million this year. You just pay me $2 million and I'll go away and you save that $500,000. That's what a buyout is. It's a player reaching an agreement with the team on a lower salary number. It's not just the Pelicans paying him his full salary and then going away. So by doing this, the Pelicans have saved about $400,000. Now, you might be like, I don't care. And you're right, you shouldn't. It's not our money. I don't really care. I'm not trying to save Gail Benson $400,000. But what this does is it gives the Pelicans another $400,000 in breathing room against the luxury tax, a number that they were still kind of up there against even after the trade deadline. Yes, they were below it, but if you're below it $1, that doesn't necessarily help you with what you want to end up doing here. They want to sign Brandon Boston Jr. from his two-way deal to a full NBA contract. And by saving this about $400,000 against the luxury tax, they can do that today. They could do it tomorrow. They may not, but you're now in position to do it without needing to do any other sort of gymnastics, cap gymnastics to sign him. So this, don't think of it as just waiving Javonte Green and getting nothing for him. Think of this as trading Javonte Green for Brandon Boston Jr. And essentially that's what this is. So this gets him on the regular NBA roster, not just this year, but likely next year too. It's going to be one of those sign him for the rest of the season, non-guarantee or team option kind of things for next year where they could waive him, and that's that. But at least they then get the option on him versus letting another team sign him. And, he's had a bit of a not a letdown, but like a slower finish to the season than when he started really strong for this team. But it's still a good piece of business. They're still going to be in some salary cap trouble next year. Getting a young guy like that who could score and has just done good for you is worth it. I'd like to see him change his shot profile a little bit, but overall, he's been good. You may as well get him on that cheap of a deal, and that's what New Orleans is doing. They've done a very good job of this over the past couple of years. So it's not just Javonte Green being waived, signing somewhere else. You're like, you just gave him to the Cavs for free. No, you got Brandon Boston Jr. in return, and they've fixed their books a little bit, which, whether we like it or not, is something that they just have to do. And it's the unfortunate reality of the situation. Overall, this is actually pretty smart and pretty good, and they've put themselves in a good position by doing this, saving some money and then using that money for something else that we want to see them do. So that's kind of what went down with the Javonte Green thing. It also looks good. This is a guy who wants to go and compete. Maybe, it looks like he could, win a title with the Cavaliers because they're kind of going for it. When they signed him, the Pelicans did, I liked it enough. I did not think he was truly going to be like Najee Marshall level. I saw a lot of people saying that. It's like, he'd have been in the league longer. He'd be making more money. He'd have a bigger role. He did not even come close to that sort of thing. But overall, he was fine for the team. Had some good moments, some bad moments too. And hopefully he can go win a title with Cleveland because I think it would be fun to watch them go out and win with that group that they have there. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. I want to get into the Cooper Flagg going to the draft or not. Maybe we'll do that over the weekend, a bonus show. I want to do one or two to kind of make up for what I've missed earlier in the week here. So we'll cover that coming up soon. More draft talk. Everything you want to know about the Pelicans right here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all next time.